Hi everyone, how you all going? This is gonna be my review of Thunderbolts. Okay, the latest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This movie was directed by Jake Schreier, I think it's how you pronounce it. And starred Florence Pugh, David Harbour, Sebastian Stan, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. It's the 36th Marvel movie or film in the MCU overall. Basically, in the film, it's pretty straightforward. Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, is still reeling from the death of Natasha Romanoff, which occurred in Avengers Endgame. Excuse me. And then she's basically working for Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And she gets tasked with stopping a supposed robbery from taking place. This review will contain spoilers. By the way, I should have said that sooner. This review will contain some spoilers. I'll put that in the title of the video as well. But she gets tasked with stopping a supposed attempted robbery from taking place within this vault beneath a mountain. But then we actually find out that the target she was assigned to neutralize is actually not intending on committing a robbery. And we find out that it was all part of Valentina's plan to get this group of misfits to kill each other. Because basically, so in the film, Valentina is on trial for impeachment, or she's facing like an impeachment hearings over illegal activities committed by the Ox Corporation, which she was chairwoman of. And she basically tries to eliminate all this evidence which can tie her to Project Sentry, and that includes actually wiping out the misfits, who were later named the Thunderbolts, who she deems to be liabilities. And in the movie, the group, we've got Yelena, who's introduced in Black Widow, Ghost, aka Ava Starr, who's actually the main villain of Ant-Man the Wasp from 2018. We've got in the movie as well Bob, aka Sentry, played by Lewis Pullman. Valentina's played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Taskmaster appears in the movie very briefly. She was also in Black Widow, but it was very pointless how they brought her back because she gets killed off literally in about 10 seconds. So her return in this movie was completely pointless. And then there's also Sebastian Stan reprising the role of Bucky Barnes once again, who also very recently did briefly appear in Captain America Brave New World. My overall thoughts on this movie, I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't love it, however. Also forgot to mention John Walker's in this movie as well, played by Wyatt Russell, who was introduced in Falcon the Winter Soldier, who was actually the one who was Captain America after Steve Rogers and before Sam Wilson, because Falcon the Winter Soldier, we see him as Captain America, but then he commits a crime, basically. And then Sam Wilson, once again, just for the second time, takes back the shield. Now, I'll start off with what I liked about this movie. I liked the movie. I enjoyed it. I didn't love it personally. What I did like, the movie does tackle some very deep themes, like for example, about depression, negativity. So in the movie, Bob, we find out that he was actually experimented on by the Ox Corporation for the purpose of a medical study, and he was actually the only one to survive. He was the only test subject that actually survived Project Sentry. And the reason why he signed up for Project Sentry was because he was suffering from depression. He had a drug addiction. He came from a very abusive background. He had a very abusive childhood. And essentially, he signed up for Project Sentry to make himself feel important, essentially. So to feel that he was signing up for something meaningful. And we find out he actually met Valentina Allegra de Fontaine whilst he was actually in Malaysia. So the movie does tackle themes of depression, and towards the end of the movie, Bob, so Sentry, basically becomes indestructible. We find out he's actually indestructible. He's the only one who survived Project Sentry. He gets shut down with the kill switch, courtesy of Valentina's assistant, Mel. In the movie, she activates his kill switch that shuts him down, but then he actually becomes Void. And then when he becomes Void, he basically becomes like a black shadowy figure, and he causes all of New York to begin also becoming black shadowy figures. Anyways, Yelena gets sucked into the Void, and then she ends up going from room to room and re-experiencing traumatic events. So again, the movie does tackle themes of depression, but also more importantly, not just depression, but actually moving on. So leaving the past behind and actually moving forward. And also the movie does tackle the theme of, if you've got depression, you can't really go through things by yourself, which is what Yelena tells Bob in the movie. You have to rely on others, essentially. So yeah, the movie does have some very deep themes around depression and moving for relying on other people for support and moving forward. The action set pieces, there were a couple of decent action sequences. One action sequence that really stood out was quite early on, actually, when the Thunderbolts, so Yelena, John Walker, Ghost, and Taskmaster, they all fight in that vault, because which was basically a Valentine that fight takes place because Valentina stitches them up to actually kill each other. So that sequence there was pretty cool. There's another action sequence that takes place in the desert, like a convoy chase, which is actually showcased in the trailer. Not bad, but although very, very short in my opinion, this movie didn't really have many standout action sequences. Now, for a Marvel movie, you go into a Marvel movie wanting action, wanting these big high octane set pieces, but this movie didn't really have too much action. On top of that, I thought the main villain in the movie, Valentina, yes, she was conniving, she was manipulative, all that. I still found her quite weak as a villain at times, personally. Like, she's a fantastic actress, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, don't get me wrong, she is a fantastic actress, and she's actually an 11-time Emmy winner. She has won 11 Primetime Emmys, so yes, she is a fantastic actress and also writer, etc., producer, etc. I just found her as a villain at times quite underwhelming, even though she was manipulative, conniving. Yeah. So, pros, the movie had some very deep themes. For the most part, I enjoyed the storyline. I quite enjoyed the storyline. The post-credits scene was pretty awesome. How basically it introduces, or it teases the introduction of the Fantastic Four in the MCU. Now, we all know that the Fantastic Four movie is coming out in late July, but the post-credit scene actually teases the introduction of the Fantastic Four in that same time period that Yelena, John Walker are living in. So the present in the MCU, basically, because the upcoming Fantastic Four movie, I believe, is set during the time of the moon landings, or the first moon landing, I should say. But the post-credit scene basically teases the introduction of the Fantastic Four in the present timeline within the MCU. What else did I like about this movie? At the end, where they get named the New Avengers, mixed thoughts on that, especially considering the fact that Thaddeus Ross in Brave New World tasks Sam Wilson with rebuilding the Avengers, and they do make reference to that in the post-credit scene as well. We find out that a feud is taking place between Sam Wilson and the New Avengers over the naming rights, basically. But yeah, I had very mixed thoughts on the Thunderbolts being named the New Avengers because of the fact that Sam Wilson was tasked with rebuilding the Avengers in Brave New World, which came out very, very recently. But overall, my thoughts on this movie, I think the pacing was pretty good for the most part. I thought the plot was solid for the most part, had some very deep themes as well, some good cinematography I felt, a couple of references that I quite enjoyed to previous Marvel movies like the first Avengers movie. There is a reference to Falcon the Winter Soldier, I mean, because John Walker, who's in the movie, one of the main Thunderbolts, he was actually introduced in Falcon the Winter Soldier, and they actually make a reference to that murder he committed in Falcon the Winter Soldier, which actually resulted in him giving up his shield. But yeah, so I enjoyed some of the references in the movie. There's also a reference to Thaddeus Ross becoming the Red Hulk in Brave New World. Cons for me personally, not enough action. Valentina as a villain, quite underwhelming at times. And also, I would have actually liked some of the supporting characters or some of the other Thunderbolts in the movie to have a bit more backstory showcased. The whole movie is basically, we learn about Yelena's backstory, how she actually caused a young child to get murdered when she as well was also a child, and that was actually the first ever assignment she ever completed for the Red Room. So yes, they do dwell a lot on Yelena's tragic and traumatic past, but I would have liked the movie to actually cover some of the other Thunderbolts, their traumatic pasts a bit more as well. I know there are previous Marvel movies, like for example, Ant-Man and the Wasp delves into Ava's past, but I would have liked the movie to actually tackle the pasts of the other Thunderbolts in a bit more depth, personally. But overall, for me personally, this movie is about a 7 out of 10 or about a 3.5 out of 5.